Hey everybody, it's Shelby from Stang Books, and I am back for another week in review. This, of course, being the week of October 8th through October 14th. This was kind of a really crazy week because I was starting a new job and doing a lot of training, and I still managed to get through some of the books I needed to, but I really wasn't enjoying my reading as much as I would have liked, and I don't know how much of that was just the books I was reading and how much was I had so much else going on that I just couldn't really enjoy anything because I was stressed out and like wanting to sleep. This week I did finish 8 books, 2 of which were shorts that were part of a series that I was trying to finish out. So, decent reading week, and let's just get into our books. My first book of this week was Songs of the Earth by Lexi Andor. This is the second book in her Sumeria's Sons series. It had been a while since I'd read the first book, so it took me a minute to get into this, but I really did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars. This is a really interesting take on mythology. It's based on Sumerian mythology, with the gods and goddesses being very active in the world. The king of the Lycans has been found, and they have kind of reappeared in their people's lives. This does take place in the modern United States, with the Lycan world being kind of hidden. Tristan has just realized that really he is meant to be king of the Lycans, and his heritage has been hidden all of these years, and the goddess has just kind of showed up, and that's where book 1 ends. So in this book, Tristan is really trying to find his place as king and what that means, and has fallen in love with his best friend, and Ushna and him are determined to be together. So this book is really a lot of kind of the finagling of figuring out exactly where things are going to go next and where the threat is going to come from, because there is a lot of power with the council and they aren't necessarily going to want to give it up now that the king has kind of returned. I really enjoy the mythology of this series. I like Tristan and Ushna as characters. You know, they've kind of separated from the Lycan world because the Lycans didn't approve of Tristan breaking his soul bond, even though his soul bonded mate had betrayed him. And so they've been kind of isolated on this ranch for a number of years and are very strong together, but now the Lycan community is kind of coming back into things. Each of these books is relatively short and probably could be combined together to make one big longer novel because each ending is kind of, you know, cliffhangery. I definitely want to read the next book in the series. I'm really enjoying this one. It's an interesting mythology. I hadn't read a lot of Sumerian history, so the gods and goddesses mostly, really, so far, are different. And I don't know their characteristics just off the top of my head the way I would with like Greek or Roman or Viking mythology. So it's keeping me really interested and I'm really enjoying it. My second book this week was Promises by Marie Sexton. This was a reread for me. I needed to read it for a number of challenges, and it was one I read so many years ago, back when I was first starting to read MM, and so I kind of wanted to reread it. It is an enjoyable book for me. I give it 4 stars. I like the characters. It is just a contemporary romance, really sweet, about Jared Thomas Hughes, grown up in a small town in Colorado, and went away to college to get his teaching degree, came back to his small town, and has just been working in his family's store since then, because as an openly gay man, it's very hard in a small town to get a job working with students. And the new police officer who's come to join their small community, Matt Richards. Now, this is a slow burn romance. Matt and Jared meet, they become friends. Of course, Jared has a crush on him, but Matt identifies as straight. And the entirety of the story is them working up into a relationship, what that means, and how Matt deals with discovering he has feelings for another man, and how Jared feels about actually pursuing a relationship with another man in a town that all knows he's gay, but's never had to really see it or confront it. So it's a really sweet story. These two are really great together. Their friendship is really wonderful, and it does work as a gay for you story because they take the time to get to know each other and you really believe in the relationship between Matt and Jared. I enjoy Marie Sexton's writing. This was a really fun read. I did give it 4 stars in my reread, and it was great to finally get it reviewed and off of my list of books that I read ages ago and want to get onto Goodreads that I had read and reviewed. My next 3 books are all part of a series by Kate Sherwood. They were Into the Light, The Filly, and Of Dark and Bright in her Dark Horse series. This does complete the majority of the series for me. There are 2 other little shorts after this book 3. and I will get to reading those at some point. I'm kind of thinking I might save them for the holidays because I know one is a Christmas story, and they are kind of just little tie-ups that make everything kind of the happily ever after endings. So I was really happy to finally get to essentially the end of this series. I've been reading it for a long time, and I just keep taking my time getting through it, but I really enjoy the characters, so it was really nice to finally get through it. Into the Light is 2.3 in the Dark Horse series. Is a short about one of the main characters' best friend, Chris, and Chris is a lawyer and friends with all of the main characters, but really grew up as Dan's friend and moved out to California with him. He is always identified as straight, but a little bit bi-curious, and this story is him exploring that other side with Ryan, who's a musician, and they meet in town, and sparks fly. So they decide to give it a shot. It is a really nice story between Chris and Ryan as Chris discovers this other side of himself. My problem with it was what happened later. It actually lost stars for me because in the final book of the series, it gets really no attention. Like, there's a brief mention of Chris and Ryan, even though Chris is throughout the whole story. So it was kind of like, I felt like, why did you do the short if you're not going to have the two of them prominently together in the final book of the series? I have heard some people say that they are more prevalent in the little shorts that come after, so that might affect how I feel about this. I did only give this one 3 stars. I would have rated it 4, but I really felt like, what was the point of the short if you're going to take it away and it doesn't really give any reason for it? So it's kind of a weird one for me. The Filly is 2.4 in the Dark Horse series, and this is like 9 pages. It's super, super short. It's really more of just a little vignette scene, but it was really cute, and I did give it 4 stars. One of the main characters in the series, Evan, has a younger sister that he's mostly raised since his parents died, and this is him and his boyfriends dealing with her first date. And it's getting ready for the Valentine's Day dance, and the boy who is coming to pick her up at the house at 16. So it was just a cute, really sweet little vignette of dealing with the older brother protective instincts as your baby sister, and really daughter in a lot of ways because you've raised her, goes out on a date, and you know what boys are like. So really cute, really funny. I really enjoyed this little short. Which does bring me to the last book in the Dark Horse series, book number 3 of Dark and Bright. This is the final culmination of Jeff, Evan, and Dan's relationship as they are struggling to finally kind of find their true balance together as a trio in this menage relationship and find the balance of kind of power amongst them all. They all love each other. They're all very happy together, but they still haven't quite worked out kind of how everybody fits together. And to start this story off, Diane's long-lost sister shows up. She's 7 months pregnant, and she's been on the run for a number of years for crimes that she committed and wants to turn herself into the police so that she can safely have her baby and give her baby a better life. Of course, not everything goes according to plan and well. The main focus of this story is dealing with Dan's sister's return, what this baby means for the 3 of them, and Jeff is dealing with some health issues of his own that send everything into a spiral. Really, this story kind of brings these guys together, really cements for them what they mean to each other, and dealing with the fact that there's the potential of Dan taking his sister's child and raising it and what that means for the 3 of them. And it really kind of forces Dan out of his shell to have to kind of talk about his feelings, which he's never good at, and forces Evan to have to tone down his own go-for-itness and really realize that he can't just control everything and he needs to bring the other 2 into his decision-making processes. And Jeff to step in and realize he doesn't mind being in the middle of these 2 and mediating the relationship amongst the 3 of them, and them realizing that Jeff isn't indestructible and needs their support and help as well. So I did give this book 4 stars. It was enjoyable. It was a good finish to the Dark Horse series. I definitely want to read the last 2 little shorts because I think they'll be just like getting to enjoy the happily ever after, that like you'll finally feel like everything's really close together. Because while at the end of this book you did feel like the guys were in a good place and they were going to move forward and be happy, you don't get that like final epilogue kind of scene where you get to enjoy the, for lack of a better term, wedded bliss. So really great series as a whole. I really enjoyed this one. as far as menage like trios go, I think this is one of my favorites, in large part because I really feel like these three guys, it wasn't easy for them. They were all attracted to each other. They all really fell in love with each other, but the dynamics within the trio were very complicated and took a lot of energy and effort to work out, and nothing was ever smooth. And I like that. I like that it wasn't just like, oh, we're in love and everything's happy. So really good series. I really enjoy Kate Sherwood's writing, which is shocking for me to say because she writes most of this book in present tense, which is just really weird to read. But very enjoyable, really great series. My last three books this week were not quite as enjoyable for me. I kind of really struggled with these. And I say I don't know if this is so much the books as it was partially just the timing of reading them. But next up, I had Stealing Snow by Danielle Page. Now, I had read one other Danielle Page book before, and when I picked up Stealing Snow, I didn't realize that she was the author of this other book, and I really didn't enjoy Dorothy Must Die very much at all. I gave it 2 stars. I had some real problems with the writing, the structure, the characters, you name it. I struggled with that book. So when I figured that out, I kind of started dreading reading Stealing Snow a little bit more than I expected to. Now, that said, I did give this book 3 stars. I did enjoy it a lot more than Dorothy Must Die. It still has problems, and I still feel like some of the same issues I had in Dorothy Must Die are present in this book, but they are handled better here than they are in Dorothy Must Die. So in Stealing Snow, you have the character Snow, who has been in an insane asylum for 11 years. Her mother put her in the asylum when she was like 5 or 6 years old because she attempted to walk through a mirror after having her mother read Alice in Wonderland to her. She thought she could go to Wonderland. So she gets put in this asylum, and she's been there most of her young life and knows really no other world other than the asylum. And in the asylum, she meets Bane, who becomes her best friend, and he and she kind of develop feelings for each other. And on their first kiss, something goes really weird, and they haven't really spoken since. And all this time, Snow is now trying, it's been, I think, almost a year, and Snow is trying to get back to being her friendship with Bane because she really relies on him when weird and strange things start happening. And eventually Bane gets pulled through a mirror into another land, and Snow now thinks she needs to go save him, and listens to a boy who tells her how to follow Bane into this other land. Well, it turns out it's the land of Algid, and actually she is the daughter of the king, who has frozen over the whole land and is basically a despot tyrant. And Snow is the prophesied princess to come and save them all. Well, this is a Snow Queen retelling. I did enjoy that aspect of the story. I liked the Snow Queen part of it. I enjoyed that kind of fairy tale. And Snow as a character, I didn't hate, but a lot of the elements of like why she was in the asylum and her thinking she's crazy didn't really make a lot of sense. Like there was nothing really wrong with her, and then she gets to Algid and is learning about her powers, and yet she suddenly is told she has these powers, can't use them, is supposed to be training with a bunch of different people, and yet there's no real training, and suddenly she can start using her powers because she quote-unquote trained, and you're like, but you didn't see her train at all. This story is really crazy, and basically every guy that she meets falls in love with her instantly and wants a relationship with her, but she's supposed to be there to save her boyfriend, Bane, and yet every time she meets a new guy, she can't help but thinking how she'd like to kiss him, and then half the time they're kissing her, and so instead of just even a love triangle, you have a love square being set up in this, which I find incredibly frustrating. There were certain elements of the story that were really enjoyable. Like, I really loved the robbers. I thought they were super fun, interesting characters. But as a whole, everything didn't really gel together, and pieces of the story would kind of get just dropped off and forgotten about and didn't move things anywhere. And a lot of the descriptions are really hard to follow. I was never clear on kind of the way the world was put together. So while this read faster, I didn't have to force myself to finish it. I enjoyed a lot more of the aspects of the story. There were a couple of good twists in it that, some you kind of saw coming, some that were a little bit more surprising. But as a whole, I enjoyed this a lot more. I did give it 3 stars. There's a lot of simplicity to the way that Danielle Page writes, and I just wish there was a little bit more depth to her characters, to the story, to the world building. Like, kind of everything feels very surface at times. So I would like a little bit more out of this series, but I am curious to see what happens next. So I probably will read book 2 at some point when it comes out, because this is a new release. But it's not one I'm going to be like running out the door for. Next up, I had Pray the Gay Away by Sarah York. It is the first book in her Southern Things series. And I just really didn't enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars overall. There are a lot of stereotypes in this book that I just didn't enjoy. In this book, Jack Miller is from the perfect family. His dad is the local minister, he's the star football player, has anything he could ever want, all the girls think he's amazing, only underneath it all, secretly, he is gay. And his father is a minister in a very, very conservative church that is all about the condemnation of the gay agenda and basically hates everything that Jack would really stand for. Suddenly, Andrew Collins moves into town, and his family joins their church. And Jack is brought in to show Andrew around and straighten him out, essentially, because Andrew was discovered kissing another boy in his old town, and they moved here to get him away from that lifestyle and basically fix him. His parents are actually starving him as punishment and training, and it's just, he has a really bad home life. Of course, Jack immediately falls in love with Andrew and Andrew with Jack, and they are trying to keep their relationship secret as they take bigger and bigger risks. I'm a minister's kid, and for me, I really did not like the way religion was portrayed in this story. Not to say that I don't think there are churches like this. I hate churches like this. There are churches like this that exist. I just really felt like it was all the worst stereotypes of that church and not really kind of a true broad picture. Plus, this is a case of Insta-Love where these two just like lock eyes and now suddenly you are the one person I want in my life. And it's like, but you are 16 years old or 17, I guess they're 17 and 18, they're seniors. So 17 and 18 years old, you've never really dated. This is the first gay kid that you've met that you know is gay. I don't buy that you're suddenly in love with each other, especially for no reason. Like, there's nothing related between them. There's not, like, within the story, this great love affair or romance or anything like that. Suddenly they're in love and they're trying to hide it. It just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. I also really didn't like the way that child services was handled in this book. I don't feel like when they got involved with Andrew and the abuse that his parents were putting him under, I don't think it was handled the way that it really would be handled, and kind of was forced in a way to make what they wanted in the story work, not how people would have dealt with the situation. Even though Andrew is 18 and technically not a child. There was some real issues I had with that. So overall, I just didn't really enjoy this book, which was sad because I've really enjoyed some of Sarah York's books in the past. I usually really like her writing, and her YA books are usually really good. For me, this one just didn't work. Not my favorite book. I own the rest of the series, and I just don't know how quickly I'll get to reading it, because this does end on, like, very much just kind of ends. And you really need to read the next book to have any idea what's going on. So we'll see. Definitely not maybe something I'm going to be quick to read. My last book this week was Watch Me Break You by Avril Ashton. And I think part of my reason I didn't enjoy this as much, I did give it 3 stars, is that the timing of reading this was just not right. I've read a lot of Avril Ashton's books in the past. They're usually kind of just decent, but not great for me. I don't tend to like the fact that a lot of her books are very insta-lovey, and a lot of her characters tend to be on the wrong side of the law and very unrepentant about it, and this is another case of that. This story is also very heavy on the BDSM elements, and I didn't hate it, I just wasn't in love with the story. So this book takes place in New York and is about 2 heads of rival gangs. And Dima Zurkov is the head of the Russian gang. He's taken over after his father died, and his brother was in prison, and he kind of inherited the gang, and he's been running it, and they work out of Coney Island. And they kind of own the whole island. He's never really been too big on expanding, but he is definitely going to be like, nobody takes over my territory. He's a little crazy, and definitely a masochist. He lives for pain, and he has He's an interesting character, definitely very dark. One day when Dima's out looking for his fix at a club that he's been told about, he walks in the door, takes one look at this dom whipping a sub, and decides that he must have this guy and that he's going to be his new toy. He wants the guy to dom him and basically take him out of himself. So he approaches Xavier Storm, or X, and X wants to resist and doesn't want to agree, but yet finds himself attracted, and they end up in a relationship together. What Dima doesn't know is that while X presents to the world that he is a lawyer, but he's also the head of the Rude Boys, and his gang is trying to take over the Russians' territory. So you have the two rival heads of gangs that should be enemies, and the two guys are falling for each other, all mixed in with this very heavy erotica, BDSM elements. It's very dark. These two are unrepentant in their criminal history, and I think my headspace just was not in the right space to read this book. I probably would have given it 4 stars at a different time, but for me right now, it just was not working the way I would want it to. It's very Avril Ashton, and I really have to be in the right mood to read her books and enjoy them. And I should have thought of that because I've read enough of her Brooklyn Center series to know how I feel about her writing. But I needed this for a challenge, and I just kind of went into it. And it was good. I enjoyed parts of it. Dima and X are not a bad couple. All the elements together added up to me just kind of being like, I don't really care. So I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I will probably look for the rest of the series later on, just nothing super quickly. So it was kind of a weird reading week for me. I am going to have a crazy week this next week, so I don't know how much reading I'm actually going to get to do. Probably not as much as I would like, but I'm always curious to know what y'all think of my reading for the week. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hopefully I'll get to talk to y'all about some of this stuff soon. Have a great day. Bye!